Visualizing the everyday lives of refugees and asylum seekers on digital spaces in the British context, towards new ways of seeing and reimagining refuginess. My research is situated in the context of UK's hostile asylum regime and the wider politics of visual representation of refugees and asylum seekers in the media, especially in the aftermath of the European refugee crisis. UK's asylum regime, as embodied in various laws and legislations, has become increasingly hostile towards asylum seekers and refugees, especially those who arrive spontaneously on British territory to seek asylum. The asylum claims are filed upon arrival at the Home Office, the chief department dealing with immigration and asylum issues in the UK. As the Home Office makes its decision on the asylum claims, the asylum seekers may have to endure a long wait akin to a limbo-like situation. The Immigration and Asylum Act introduced the policy of dispersal of asylum seekers to different British cities and towns as they wait upon the Home Office's decision on their asylum claims. This limbo-like process of waiting is often endured by asylum seekers in different dispersal cities or towns across the UK. The dispersal cities and towns are therefore an important site where the everyday lives of refugees and asylum seekers are lived and grounded. The hostile environment in the UK has given rise to hostile ways of seeing refugees and asylum seekers, which is further solidified by the mainstream media. They are either seen as passive victims lacking any agency, or bogus welfare claimants or queue jumpers, or even criminals possessing dangerous agency. These are some of the dominant tropes of refugee representation in the media. In this slide, we can see refugees and asylum seekers represented as passive victims and recipients of humanitarian aid, or as threats to the nation-state in the form of homogenized masses of people, mostly men, arriving in overcrowded boats. In this context, I ask the question, how are the subjectivities of refugees and asylum seekers depicted visually on the digital spaces of humanitarian organizations as they wait for the asylum decisions in British dispersal cities and towns? Digital visualities. While dominant narratives and visualities in asylum are primarily framed at the national level by the Home Office and national media, I aim to explore the digital as a site where nation-state-centric accounts of asylum may be reconfigured and potentially unsettled. The digital domain is being increasingly used by advocacy and humanitarian actors to register dissent against hostile immigration policies and to represent refugees and asylum seekers in a new light. Based on a visual analysis of digital artifacts like images and film on the digital spaces of UK-based network City of Sanctuary, I found that a common representational strategy used was to depict refugees and asylum seekers engaging in everyday activities like cooking, gardening, sewing, eating, socializing, etc. in different urban sites. These were some of the images I came across on the digital spaces of City of Sanctuary. A recurring theme across the visual representations was agency. Scholars like Begelman argue that waiting is a sovereign technology used by the UK Home Office to create unease amongst the refugees and asylum seekers through creating unpredictability. This process of unease created through the ambiguousness of waiting in precarious living conditions is ultimately meant to break their morale. However, Kohli et al. In their study on young asylum-seeking girls in Finland find that waiting does not necessarily have to be bleak and can in fact be hopeful and purposeful. Method. Based on a multimodal analysis of the City of Sanctuary digital visualities, I found evidence that waiting can in fact be endured by refugees and asylum seekers agentively rather than passively or powerlessly through their everyday activities in British cities and towns. Consider the example of DESIREE, an asylum seeker from Cameroon who awaits her asylum decision in the city of Wolverhampton in the UK. The lockdown in 2020 confined her to her accommodation and isolated her, forcing her to find a creative outlet for herself. She got in touch with a volunteer at a local charity and expressed her interest in making masks for the community as she enjoyed sewing. This quote from DESIREE highlights her agency and creativity in circumventing lockdown isolation and helping the community at large. As an asylum seeker who has been relegated to the margins of the British society herself with an uncertain future, she takes the initiative to help the wider community during the pandemic by calling local people in a social network. The rhetorical message of the image, when considered in conjunction with the text, conveys a sense of agency and achievement on the part of DESIREE, as she has gone beyond her own troubles as an asylum seeker and created something useful for the wider community in a difficult time like the pandemic. This unsettles the mediated imaginations of refugees and asylum seekers as bogus queue jumpers who are in the UK purely to take advantage of the generous welfare systems. I conclude by saying that such agentic representations of refugees and asylum seekers doing everyday activities and contributing to the host society subvert the dominant imaginations created by the national media, thereby producing new ways of seeing refuginess. Thank you.